dance. You know this, right? You don't move too fast, too hard. There we go. Let's keep it. I like that vibe. Come on, Janet, give it to us. All right, who's old enough to remember when this came out? Oh, a good part of the room. Okay. All right, you can wind it down. All right, you can tell I'm shy, right? So, Julie, thanks for that introduction, giving up our secrets at the bar. That's not okay. Opal, you in here? Opal must have stepped out because she was before me, but she was in that little bit of company with us, as well as we ended up having everybody come over to where we were because we were so quiet and shy that people walked over and like, what is going on over here? And it was really just a meeting at the bar, not a meeting in the ladies' room, but a meeting at the bar. And it was a good one because we were able to just talk. And what was wonderful about it, ladies, was that you couldn't have had more different personalities who just sat down and had a great dialogue about life, where we are, politics, our faith, everything, our business. And that's what I hope when we walk out of this room and when we walk out of this conference, that we walk away with new friendships, with new connections, and that we realize that we are so much more alike than we are different. And I think that's what's going to save the United States of America, when we realize that we are more alike than we're different. So before I get started on the master class, I was doing my study every day that I do with my best friend. Every day we have a fellowship and a study. And if you don't have that in your life, I want to encourage you, whether it's journal writing, whether you just sit still, you get on the phone with one of your girls, and you go through a book, or you have some mindfulness cards, or whatever it is that you do, I really hope that you take that time for yourself. You know, there's a great quote that I saw this morning in my fellowship, and it went something like this, that if your compassion doesn't include compassion for yourself, then it's incomplete. And I think we as women have a really hard time being kind to ourselves, giving ourselves that self-care and that permission that we give to everybody else, that we offer up to everybody else, and we don't take care of self. So the subtitle of my last book is something I think probably every woman in this room can relate to, particularly if you're over 40. 21 life lessons I learned taking care of everyone but me. Who can relate to that last part? Woo, everybody. Okay, so let's talk a little bit before we get into this master class about control. I chose that song intentionally, one, because I love it and because I'm old and Janet Jackson is still really cool to me, and so I didn't want to do something that's new, and I wanted to do something that really spoke to when I grew up. But this notion of control is an interesting one. You know, when that song came out, it was a big deal because we were really in the 80s talking about women's empowerment, right? And it was Janet telling the world, I'm tired of being told what to do. I'm taking control and I can make my own decisions. And you know what? That's a good thing, but let me offer this as we fast forward to the 21st century. Women are exhausted. Yes. We are tired, overworked, overwrought, trying to take care of everyone but self. And so that quest for control has really made us a little out of control. And I want you to think of the irony of that, the juxtaposition of control isn't really control at all, because here's what I learned at my age. I can't control anyone or anything in this life but me. Period, full stop. And neither can you. So give it up, let it go, and begin putting yourself at the top of your priority list. That's what this masterclass is going to be about and how we make it work in the workplace. Okay, let's start. Oh, I've got the clicker. Ha ha. That's funny. I thought they did. I do. Here we go. All right. Why am I talking to you about the life-changing power of emotional well-being and self-care? Because every one of us feels it. Every one of us, particularly post-COVID, something shifted in the world, literally. Something shifted in our marriages, in our homes, with our children, with our jobs. Quiet quitting. I don't want to go back to the office. I finally learned how to do virtual. Why are you making me go back to the office? So what we've got to learn to do, ladies, is, again, put self at the top of our priority list Listen, UKG, I want to applaud you. By the way, can we give them a round of applause for having this conference? I want to applaud you because the smart companies of the 21st century, the smart businesses of our time understand that wellness is now a huge issue as to how well people will perform at work, what the bottom line will be. So smart companies do exactly what we're doing in this room. And what I really want to say to you at the outset as we set the tone is I want you to kind of reflect on this slide a little bit, that it's time for us to dig deeper. And what do I mean by dig deeper? Well, you guys have all heard of Titanic, right? Titanic was not sunk by the tip of that iceberg that those men in the crawl at the top saw. They tried to turn, and what sunk Titanic was what was submerged beneath the tip of that iceberg that ripped off the rivets and sunk the unsinkable boat. Why am I talking to you about Titanic? Because every one of us in this room has stuff we don't talk about. Every one of us in this room has issues that if we dig deeper beyond the layers, we've been through stuff. We've dealt with stuff. We're going through stuff right now. But we don't give ourselves permission to dig deeper. And what I want you to understand, ladies, is that if you don't do the work and you don't put you first, you will sink you. Because it's what lurks beneath that threatens to take us off our path, to not have the lives we want, to not have the joy we want, the success we want. So I want you to think about digging deeper in your life, okay? Because what is life worth if we're not really doing the work to become better people and happier at our jobs and happier in our lives? So I want you to think about that. The next thing is that, as I said before, self-care is now more essential than ever, and smart companies get that because of COVID. COVID changed everything. And the pandemic did something that maybe we didn't understand before, because I was talking to a mentor of mine who's at Microsoft, and one of the things that he said to me was that we've noticed women and women of color have started to ascend in ways while we were during the COVID break, when we were out of the office, that they weren't doing while we were in the office. And he's telling me that women don't want to come back necessarily from the virtual because they can manage their kids now, they can handle things, they can do, and they don't want to go back to the drama of the office. So one of the things that COVID has done for us, and I think it's a good thing, is that COVID has made us rethink the way we do life, rethink the way we work. And I want you to know that it is safe and it is okay not to be okay, and to talk about the issues that you may be dealing with, because they have everything to do with how you're going to show up in the world. So let's get into this. According to Harvard Business Review, that's the Bible for me. I love reading Harvard Business Review. If you don't read it, you should read it. Today's workers want three things: career, community, and cause. And you may be thinking, everything shifted. You hear nothing else I say today, everything shifted with COVID. We had to dig deeper. And so people are looking for jobs now. You're HR professionals. People are looking for jobs now where they're going to get something out of it. They're going to be a part of a community. They believe in causes. You see what the companies are dealing with, right? You see Walgreens in the news over the abortion pill. You see these companies now getting involved in causes, either deciding for or against. Disney is under attack in Florida because of politics, because of causes, right? So let's talk about those 3 C's, because I think they're really important to you, particularly if you're a younger woman and you're just starting your career. These things matter. Quickly, career is about working. Career is about having a job, right? The long and short of it is, do what you love. Do what you love. Number 2, community is about people. The people you work with, the people you are in a community that you live in. And it's about being connected, and it's about belonging. I think we want to be in workplaces as women because we do practice EIQ in ways that men don't. That emotional intelligence, that the softer skills, if you will. We care about those type of things. And then the last thing is cause, and that's purpose. And cause is, I want to work for a company that believes in a strong environment. I want to work for a company that's pro-choice, or I want to work for a company that supports causes overseas. Whatever it is, we're shifting to a more human, more humane, more well-being focused workplace. And that's really important for those of you who are in leadership or who are in managerial roles, executive roles, because you're going to have to deal with this going forward, because we're never going back to the way it was pre-COVID. We're not going back. Okay. Self-care by definition. This one, ladies, we need to work on, but I need to say it out loud. I want you to repeat it with me. Self-care is not selfish. Say it. Self-care is not selfish. Say it like you mean it. Self-care is not selfish. Now, how many of you really believe that? You don't have to raise your hand. Just a few of y'all did. I asked you to repeat that because, again, for women, we are guilted and shamed most of the time by our own families, our communities, our jobs, when we want to put self first. And that's wrong. And I love seeing this room, and I love the ladies I had a chance to fellowship with last night and break bread with last night, because they understand that. And you have to understand that taking care of you is just like every time you get on an airplane and she tells you to put your mask on first. And she tells you that because if you lose the oxygen to your brain, you cannot help your small children. You cannot help your elderly parent next to you. You can't help anybody if you can't help yourself. So stop being guilty and stop being shamed and stop letting people tell you that taking care of you is not what you should be doing. That's really convenient, isn't it? For you to take care of everybody but you? Get that out of your spirit and let that go. I'm not telling you to be unkind. I'm not telling you to cut people off. What I'm telling you to do is to put you at the top of your priority list and watch how your life changes for the better. So if we're talking about self-care more, and we are, why? Well, apparently this started before the pandemic. Dr. Paula Lopez did a study, and they noticed a trend around 2015, going into the 2016 presidential election cycle, which I think we all agree was a game changer for our country. Whatever side of the political aisle you're on, it was a game changer. But I think we also started to feel some type of stress and distress. And so what we know is that the pandemic exacerbated what we were already feeling. And that's important as we talk about this today, as we talk about EIQ. And then I'm going to give you 7 life lessons I learned, and then it's for you to walk out the room, I hope, with something. Who knows what emotional intelligence is? Just yell at me. Just say things. Define emotional intelligence. Thoughts, what is it? Y'all are bad. Awareness of yourself. What else? Awareness of other people's emotions. Anything else? Good at responding to others. That's interesting. Anything else? Empathy. I like that. Anybody else? Emotional intelligence? Balance. That's good. Boundaries. All of those are the right things. So I would say to you this, that at the core of emotional intelligence is knowing your worth and knowing your value. Because it all starts with you and you and you and you. And I opened up talking about control because one of the things we as women try to do, we want to be in control. Because we figure the more I can control stuff, the more I can take on and the more I can manage. And I want you to know that that's just not true. It's a good way to be burnt out. It's a good way to be exhausted. It's a good way to be cranky and not so nice and not happy with your life. So let's start with this. Knowing your value and honoring your woman code. Now you're like, Sophia, what's a woman code? Well, let's talk about that. The Woman Code was my second book, And this book did amazing things all over the world. I went from Sydney, Australia, to Canada, to Africa, to Europe. I was everywhere on the planet. For 7 years, this book stayed on the bestsellers list because women connected with the thought that there's a code of conduct among us as sisters. That really, there's a sisterhood of women, right? And even though we're different, which is where I started this conversation when we were at the bar last night, we're talking, we couldn't have been more different as people, beliefs, backgrounds, but we connected around that code. And that code, ladies, starts with you knowing that you have worth and value. Some of the most successful women I know don't know their value. And you're thinking, how is that possible? But you know people like that too. And your code is a compass. Your code is a compass. And what I mean by that is, there's a way you should treat the other women that you work with. You should lift other women as you climb up the ladder. You should lift other women as you climb up the ladder. You should be resilient. You should be brave. There's a way that we women live, thrive, succeed, and take care of each other. That's your woman code. And your woman code is your compass. Knowing your value, knowing the value of the woman sitting next to you, lifting her as you yourself go up, is how you really become a successful human being. And what I'm saying to you to bring this all into focus is that as we've shifted post-COVID, although we're still in COVID, I guess, but we're kind of not. I'm not sure, are we? I know the president declared it was over officially, so I guess it must be over then. Right. The bottom line is that we have now all become very cognizant of something that is inevitable. On Saturday, as I was packing to come here, and my assistant came over, we're getting ready, my mom comes downstairs and she's crying and she tells me, your grandmother just passed away. That was Saturday. I had to make a decision about whether or not I was going to show up here today. And then I've got other places I have to go. And that woman code in me and my grandmother and what she instilled in me, and when I did the paperback version of the book in 2021, I dedicated it to her. And my maternal grandmother was 93. That's a lot of years. She was fully cognizant. She knew who we were. She was pretty healthy. It seems like she must have had pneumonia, what they're saying, and we didn't know it. We thought it was a cold. And so she passed away in her sleep. But when I think of her and the things I learned from her, a woman of the greatest generation, a woman who had 10 kids, 35 grandkids, of which I'm the first, and 15 great-grandkids, a woman who grew up through the Great Depression, an African-American woman who was from parents, one black, one white. She's a direct lineal descendant of slaves. What an extraordinary life she lived. And she would have shook me to my core if I didn't show up here today. She would have said, don't use me as an excuse not to go to work. You go to work. You do what you're supposed to do. And you bless those ladies and you talk to those ladies. I bring that up to say this, that all of us come from a long line of amazing women who came before us. None of us could be in this room without their sacrifices, because when they came through, it was hard being a woman. And I think of my grandmother today, and when I talk about a woman code, I learned things from her. And I learned things from my paternal grandmother, who was very dear to me. And as we get into these life lessons, one of the things that she said to me before she died, we were talking a few months ago, and she told me, how proud she was of me, which we always want to hear from our elders and our parents and our grandparents before they leave us. But she said what she was proud of was that I was my own woman. And I thought that was interesting. And she said, in my day, we didn't have that option. She said, but I'm proud of you. I got to see you graduate law school. I've watched you do amazing things. You've written books. You're your own woman. And she said, never change that. And I want to say that to all of you. Being your own woman and being in control is a really good thing. But at the end of the day, what matters more is the kind of life that we lead. And so I wrote this last book with those thoughts in mind. As you age, everything shifts. Everything shifts. But what really shifts is your heart. and your focus. And you begin to look back a little bit and say, well, have I done the things I want to do? And am I taking care of me? And when I asked that question, the answer came back kind of no, which is why I wrote this book. So I picked 7 life lessons. I can't do all 21 today, but I did 7 that I thought would help you to take better care of you and to balance your work and your living, and to remember that when you're in the workplace, all of these people are in your human beings too, and they have needs just like you and thoughts just like you and hopes just like you, and they're not your competition. Collaboration is such a better word. It's okay to compete, but collaboration, I think, is one of the secret weapons of being a woman. I think we are masterful at collaboration. And I think when we do it, we run circles around the boys. So, just saying. All right, let's get into this. First slide, first life lesson. Okay. Everything about taking care of yourself and putting you first starts with 3 questions. And this is an exercise I really want you to do over the next couple of weeks. Actually, I do it pretty much every day. But you have to build that muscle. And it starts with 3 questions that you need to ask yourself. The first question is, what do I want? When is the last time you asked yourself what you want? What you want, not what the kids want, not what the dog wants, not what your husband wants, not what everybody else, what you want. How many of you could answer that question now if you had to? The second question is a little bit deeper. It's that submerged part that I talked about. It's the underneath. What do I need? Because what I want and what I need are 2 very different things, ladies. They're very different. Your needs are from a deep place. When is the last time you asked yourself, what do I need? And am I getting it? I think most of the time we don't dare to ask these questions, and you know why? Because we don't want the answer. Because the answer might force us to have to change some things. The answer might force us to have to leave some things behind and some people behind. And we don't want to do that. And then the last question is really a deeper question still, which is a 2-parter. How am I feeling? How you're feeling has 2 parts. How do I feel physically? Are you checking in with your health? Are you healthy? Do you move every day? Are you doing something to take care of your body? My mother, about a few months ago, started noticing she was a little winded. Now, she's a nurse by trade, and she's retired now, and she blew it off at first, but luckily she listened, and she didn't feel great, so she went to the doctor, and they did some tests, and everything looked good, and she said, no, I'm still winded. Do some more tests. You know what turned out? 97% blockage. I said 97% blockage. We were just lucky that it was the right artery that blocked, not the big one, because she would have had a heart attack and died. We dodged a big bullet because she paid attention to her body, and she was adamant with her doctors who were saying, no, you're good. You just need to lose a few pounds. She was 97% blocked. She's still walking this earth. She has stents now, but she's better than she was. And so I'm saying to you, if you don't feel good, go to a doctor. Ladies, you know that heart attack symptoms are different for us, right? We don't have the same symptoms that men have. They manifest differently, so pay attention to your body when you're asking, how am I feeling? And then the second part to how am I feeling is, how am I feeling? Am I okay? Am I depressed? Am I having a hard time getting out of the bed? Am I unhappy? What's going on with me? Because it's okay not to be okay. And it's okay to tell somebody. And it's okay to ask for help. The thing we do to ourselves that's so cruel is that when we know we don't feel good and when we know we're not okay, we still keep going. And the worst part is our girlfriends, if you've got the wrong girlfriends, because if you got the right girlfriends, they'll tell you the truth. Hope you heard that. Get truth tellers in your life. Because they'll tell you, go on, girl. I call them the go on girls. Go on, girl. You got this. Go on, girl, you can take on more. Go on, girl. You're ragged, you're worn, you're weary, you're exhausted, but go do some more. You got this. That's not the right thing to say. We need to start pulling each other up, and we need to care about each other as a community of sisters and encourage each other to be healthy first. Exterior and interior, they both matter. Next. All right, clear an emotional, relational, and physical clutter. Anybody have that drawer in your house? You know the drawer I'm talking about, right? Or the closet that you open up and stuff starts falling out and you just shove it back in. You know, right? I got one at my house. And you look at it and you say, oh, I'm going to clean this out. And 10 years later, it's worse. If you want to take your power back, if you want to change your life, if you want something different, if you want to know and answer the questions, what do I want, what do I need, and how do I feel, you better start decluttering. And by that, I mean taking time for you, because all of us in this room are on all the time, 24/7. I'm old enough to remember a time when we ate dinner at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. You sat down with the whole entire family. There was one meal cooked. There wasn't 7 meal cooks because this kid didn't eat that. This one didn't do this. Da-da-da-da. There was no soccer games interrupting dinner. You showed up. You were there. You got stuff done. Everybody was in bed by 11 o'clock. And it started all over again. And there was conversation at the dinner table. You watched the evening news. Peter Jennings, Dan Rather. I'm not old enough to remember Walter Cronkite, but the bottom line is there was a different tempo to our lives. Our lives move fast now, and our lives never stop because the devices never go off. We don't turn them off. Arianna Huffington is inventing this thing. I lie to you not. If you're not familiar with Arianna Huffington's Thrive, you should be, because it's amazing. And it's all based on the fact that Arianna Huffington, who had just made $500 million when she sold Huffington Post to AOL, who was doing great things, she was exhausted. She couldn't sleep. She was an insomniac. And it got so serious that she actually ended up falling because she was basically sleepwalking. And she got a very serious physical injury, and she had to go in the hospital. And basically what she talks about when she talks about this, read her book, Thrive, follow Thrive Global. I'm plugging you, Arianna. But the thing is, she tells a story of a woman who was walking and was exhausted because she wasn't dealing with the divorce she had and this and that, and everything else just got shoved under the carpet, and it caught up. As my grandmother used to say, there's a running day and a catching day. And there is. It will always catch you, ladies. So start decluttering. Because these phones not going off ever, the rings, the pings, the noises, the this, the that, it's not good for us as human beings. So get some discipline in your life and start setting time limits for when you're on your phone. There has to be a time when you stop working. You know that, right? You are entitled to go home at some point and eat your dinner and be with your family and have rest and respite. You're entitled to that whether you believe it or not. But only you, as I said at the beginning, can control you. Nobody's going to do it for you. So declutter your life. And by that I mean do the work. Face it so you can fix it. Next, reframe your thoughts. The Bible says the power of life and death is in your words. I would disagree a little bit and say the power of life and death is in what you think. Because what I think about, I bring about. What I think about comes out of my mouth eventually, right? And then what comes out of my mouth becomes the way that I live and how I show up in the world. Some of you really need to learn 2 words, boundaries and no. Because until you reframe the things that you're thinking about into, I like to say, life happens for me and not to me, Think about the switch of those words. Life happens for me, not to me. I'm changing it from a negative to a positive. I'm setting some emotional boundaries, and I'm not going to allow myself to be negative. I'm not going to allow myself to be with negative people. How many of you know negative people? How many of you know people, look, a lot of hands, that when their number comes up on your phone, you send it to voicemail, right? Because you already know. And yet we stay connected to these people. Now, if it's your spouse, that's difficult. And if it's your family, that's difficult. But at the end of the day, I want you to learn that no is a complete sentence. And when you reframe your mind to the fact that you are entitled to care to and to love to and respect to and sleep and peace to, it shifts everything. So you have to make a conscious choice, ladies, to put yourself first. I know what I'm saying to you today is messing some of you up. Some of you aren't going to like it. Who is she to tell me to put myself first? Okay. Keep putting yourself last. See how it works out for you. It won't. Get out of your own way. How many of you are in your own way? Nobody's going, oh, she's brave. I got a brave one. Good for you. I'm in my own way all the time. What do I mean by that? Sometimes my worst enemy to the things I want in life is me. It's not anybody else. You in this room, again, if you hear nothing else, you are the only thing you can control in this life. You can't control your kids. You can't control your spouse. You can't control the dog. You can't control anybody, anywhere. You can't control your boss. You can't control your colleagues. You can only control you and what you do. And the way that you do that is by getting out of your own way. I said earlier to have people around you, I call it a front row. My grandmother used to say, baby, you need to know your front row. What she was saying is you need a good circle of friends. And I'm going to get to that in a moment. But the important part of that is you need people around you, like I said, who are truth tellers, who will tell you, Sophia, that was really messed up what you did. You need to fix that. That wasn't okay. Because if you don't empower people in your life to tell you the truth and to help you, you're going to be the only one in the room who doesn't see that you're the problem. And we all know people like this. We all know people like this who were like, when are they going to get it? Like, it's them. It's not everybody else. And those are hard things because those are blind spots. And we always have blind spots when it comes to self. Next, we're almost done here. Managing your expectations. Let me say this about that. I think the word expectations has gotten a bum rap. You know, I listen to the kids now and say, well, I don't expect anything and I can't get hurt. Wow. That's not how you want to live. You have every right to have expectations. I can tell you this, that your bosses have expectations of you. Am I right? If they give you a deadline, if you have a project, a team thing, and they gave you a date, they don't want to hear that it's going to be 3 months late or that you can't get it done. They have a right to have expectations. The thing about expectations of ourselves, again, as women, we have not been socialized, ladies, as we all know, to believe that we have a right to that self-care, that self-time, that well-being. We've been taught that we are to care, to nurture, to give, to do, to lift, to build. And we do it well. But somewhere in there, and all of us knows a relative like this, or maybe it's the woman we see in the mirror, where we're looking back and we're going, what did I do for me? What do I want from me and my living and my life? So managing our expectations starts, again, with self. Everything I'm telling you has one simple thread through it all. It's about you and how you deal with you. It's about you and how you take care of you. It's about you and asking yourself the hard questions of what do I want, what do I need, and how am I feeling? Manage those expectations, but have them. Because expectations are how we have goals. Every woman in this room got here because you had a goal, a dream, an expectation that you would do more with your life, that you could accomplish something with your life. So don't ever let anybody tell you that having expectations is bad, Because all of us have expectations. The key is, are we communicating them? And are they being received and engaged? That's the key. Next, now you're going to ask me, what do manners have to do with self-care? They have everything to do with self-care, because how I treat other people is how things are going to come back at me. Manners matter. Thoughtfulness, kindness, writing a thank you note. Those things may seem old and outdated, but they serve you well. And they also bring down your stress levels. When you are a decent person and you treat people well, ladies, it comes back. Everybody knows who the nice person at the office is, and everybody knows who the not nice person at the office is. Am I correct? We all know. So manners is a way of thinking about how we engage other human beings as well as ourselves. How do you want to show up in the world? How do you want to show up in the world? And I talked about this one already, knowing your front row, which is, who are the women in your life? Your friends, your girls, your ride or die? Because all of us have them and all of us need them. But building this amazing circle of friends will save your life. Because leadership principles tell us that the 5 people we spend the most time with can determine the trajectory of who we become. Think about the power of that. John Maxwell has been talking about this for years, about the circle, the influencers in your life and the role they play. So if you're a young woman just starting out in your career, you need good mentors and you need good sponsors. And if you're a woman at the middle of your career, at the end of your career, you need to be a good mentor and a good sponsor. You need to help these young women make their way. You need to build a row, a sisterhood that you empower. One of those is sitting over there, my friend Crystal. Crystal waved to everybody. I've just embarrassed her. But Crystal lives here in Georgia, and I called her and I said, Crystal, I'm going to be in town. I want you to come and hang out with me. But Crystal's one of those people that if I call and I tell her something, she's going to tell me the truth about it. She's going to do it in love sometimes, but she's going to tell me the truth. And you need that in your life, because if you're not being authentic with yourself, what else is there? So build an amazing row, because it blesses you and it comes back in spades. Last but not least, don't cancel people. Call them out, then call them in. Don't cancel people. Cancel culture, we've all heard about it, right? It's on the news literally 24/7. It happens at the workplace. It happens on the college campus. Boy, do I know that. It happens everywhere, because we're short-tempered now. The devices, and I wish I had my phone because I would demonstrate it. The devices have taught us shorthand, not human dialogue, not courageous conversation. And if you think about it, what we do now is what? We do a reply to all, passive-aggressive email when we're upset with somebody, or we get on Facebook and we do the sub-post about somebody, and because we know who's connected to us. Did you see what Joy wrote on that post? Girl, she was mad. And then she tagged 600 people that everybody knows, right? And we take our grievances now public. We air them out broadly instead of going to the person who's upset us or offended us and saying, can we have a cup of coffee? Or is that what you really meant? Listen to me. Young people in particular, listen to me. You cannot put your whole life on social media. If you do, it's a problem. It can cost you your job, and it can keep you from getting another job. We live our lives now, as I said at the outset, in this nonstop cycle. And none of us are better for it. But this one here is one you gotta get right if you wanna be a happy, healthy, whole human being. It's called have a conversation. Talk before you walk. Talk before you tweet. Talk before you text. Because if you don't, and you just cancel people or you just assume things about people, You're going to miss a lot of really good things in life. And again, we're short-tempered now. We're short-fused. Microsoft did a study. In 1988, the human attention span was 1 minute and 30 seconds, right? No internet yet. None of this stuff. How many of you are old enough to remember direct mail come in your house? Remember they send? And you remember the Jell-O jingles, and you had these long commercials and stuff. Because the human attention span was longer. We had to engage because we knew how to talk. How many of you know what the human attention span is in the year 2023, according to Microsoft study? Anybody want to give me a guess? Minute and 30 seconds in 1988. And no cheating, no Googling.
2 seconds, 40 seconds, 6 seconds, 35, 20 seconds.
Some of you are in the ballpark. 8 seconds. 1 minute and 30 seconds to 8 seconds. Think about that for a moment. Do you know anybody got teenagers? Or you got them out the house? Okay. Well, let me just say this. If you have young people that either you're raising, nieces, nephews, your kids, or they're out the house, you will notice something very different about this generation. Gen Z, Y and Z, right? They don't do well with conversation at all. And if you talk to them too long, they literally will start to melt down. They'll start to cry. They don't understand. You're attacking them. It's not because this is how they're wired now. I'm not being funny when I say this, and I'm not making excuses. It's very difficult. I'm an adjunct college professor. Man, college is a rough place. This generation exacts consequences. They don't want to cancel. They want consequences. Unless those consequences come at them. Then they don't like them. And I want you to understand as we're in the workplace now, we have multi-generations of women, baby boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, and Gen Y and Z coming up. That's a lot of different people with a lot of different training, with a lot of different thought processes going on in the same workplace, with a lot of different manners, mannerisms, the code that they live by. So this one you got to get right. If you want peace in your life, don't cancel people. Give them a break. Show them some grace. Ask a question. Again, back to our fellowship last night. Couldn't have had more different women sitting at that table. But we found out that we had a lot more in common than we might have that's different. And laughter and wine was one of them, right? Universal languages. All right, let's wrap this up. I think that's it. No, I'm not done yet. No, you're free. I got time. We're going to take questions, by the way. Let me try to just give a context for what I've said here in this class about being the one that you need. Being the one that you need. Being the one that you need means simply that you see yourself as a priority. That you put yourself on your own to-do list. That you actually have the courage and the desire to ask yourself, what do I want? What do I want from my living? What do I want from my work? What do I want from my community? What do I want from my causes? It's knowing, ladies, that you have value no matter what tapes may be playing in your head from your childhood. Everybody in this room should read Oprah's latest book last year titled, What Happened to You? Not what's wrong with me, but what happened to me. I'm not talking about being a victim. I'm talking about taking your power back. That's what being the one you need is all about. It's about you looking out for you. You can still love your family. You can still be a great wife, a great mom, a great grandmom, a great friend. All those things you can be. We are really good at multitasking, ladies. We're good at it, except for when it comes to self. So I want you to leave here understanding that it's not selfish for you to want something for yourself. It is not selfish for you, and you don't have to feel guilty, and you don't have to feel like you're failing. I talk to more mothers with more guilt than I ever want to talk about. Guilt over what? You do everything for everybody all the time. Why are you guilty? I could be doing more for them. How about doing something for you? How about if you go to the spa? How about if you rest, you get sleep? How about you showing up more refreshed? How about you showing up nicer? You talk about blessing the people in your life. How about you not being tired, exhausted, angry, and you're happy, fulfilled, and open and ready? Think about that. Think about how you want to show up. Thank you for having me today. I appreciate you all so much. Let's take some questions.
Hi, I'm Nicole. How do you envision, or what does it look like in building a community with the new generations who are more prone to work from home or prefer remote work and who aren't the most social conversationally? What does that look like now?
You know, that's a great question. Did everybody hear her question? She said, how do you build a community? And I'm assuming you're talking about work, right? The workplace. And what she's saying is that, to my earlier point, if you are a baby boomer or a Gen Xer, like I am, you are more likely to like going into the traditional workplace. You appreciate that community. You've got your work friends. You hang out, go out for drinks afterwards. You do projects. You travel together, etc. And then there's a new generation, God bless you, that has these very different sets of norms and how they communicate. And they much prefer devices. They really don't want to do the hangout community thing, and they got other things they want to do. I think the way you do that is it starts from the leadership. The leadership, like I said, of UKG has this thing down. I can't say enough. I'm all over, and I talk to companies all over, and I've never seen a culture quite like this one. And so you're doing something right, keep it up. But I think that the way you do it is the leadership has to say, okay, if you're gonna do remote work, you can do that 3 days a week, but you gotta come in 2 days a week. Because you've gotta have that human connection. What did I just talk about? That need for conversation. If I don't know you and you don't have a face to me, I can much more easily dismiss you. I can cancel you. I can ignore you. I don't have to deal with you. All of us are seeing the same news every night, and it's bad. People are becoming meaner, more callous, more disconnected, hiding behind screens and saying things they would never say to somebody in person. So the way you do that is the corporate leadership at the top has to be intentional, good word. Intentional about making sure that remote workers and the people that are in the office have some overlap time, and it has to be consistent. That's how you do it. And you have to outreach too to those, particularly if you have different workers doing different things. You have to create events like this, or you have to create maybe Friday night, you wear jeans and everybody shows up somewhere. You have to be intentional, otherwise it doesn't work. But that's a great question, and thank you. Next question. I know you've got them. Come on. Yes. Did you put your hand up? Or no, she didn't. Okay. Yes. I can't see with the lights, so I'm sorry.
Name's Marcia. How do we create equity for the people who were fine not having that social interaction and being with people, the introverts? How do we create equity for them by not forcing them to have these social interactions?
Well, here's what I think. I think that whether it's the community you live in, the community you work in, the community that you're a part of socially, with your social clubs and organizations, the Links, the Junior League, Alpha Kappa Alpha, whatever sorority fraternity you're in, whatever. I think that you're a member of a community. And I think one of the things that we need to do a better job of is, this is a tough one because I want to say what I want to say, but I'm going to watch myself. I think that these words that we use where we don't want to force people and we want to be, those are all good. Of course we don't want to force people. However, when you're a part of an organization, you got to be a part of the organization, right? So you can be an introvert at home, but when you're at work, you're there to not just work, you're there to build relationships, to climb, to get experiences, to build mentors and sponsors. And so I think the answer to the question of people who are introverted is help them not to be so introverted, is my answer. and you invite them out, and you help them to, they can still be who they are, but it's clear that they're wanted and that you want them to be a part and you value them. Does that make sense? Because that's how you build those type of relationships, and that's what really helps to pull people out of their box and put them into a place where they can connect with others. I'm not one that's big on believing anybody should be isolated or be allowed to be isolated, but I'm an extrovert, so there's that, right? So I understand, and if anybody's an introvert and wants to speak to this, I'd like to hear from you if you have thoughts on it.
So this is my wheelhouse.
Okay.
I'm an extroverted introvert. I can, communicate with folks, but it's not fair for me to have to be required to socialize on my time, and have these social interactions. I have friends, and working in HR, I can't be friends with the people I work with. So we do have to draw the line there. That's a big one. The only people that I trust are the people in my department, because folks will turn on you in a minute as soon as they feel as though their job is threatened. So, I don't get my friends in my friend group from work, and to have to be forced into those situations puts me into an uncomfortable situation and in one that I know won't serve me. So I think that there needs to be some balance, for the folks who are the extroverts that want that. I say have it, have your friends, go out to coffee, go out to lunch. But in all honesty, especially in these pandemic times, our level of productivity has just gone through the roof. We don't have enough time to do our job. And for folks now to say, oh, we need you to come out for a pizza, it's just a no for me.
Well, thank you for that, and I think you ought to be writing some policies, right? Because I think you're coming from that other point of view. Like you said, you're an extrovert who's really an introvert, and probably all of us has that. But I think that I've never seen a workplace where you're forced to go somewhere. You don't want to do that. But on work time, and you and I agree on that, not on your weekend or whatever, but on your work time, companies do this all the time. Do the brown bag lunch and have a speaker and everybody comes, whatever. Figure out ways to engage your people, because again, the more events you can do like this, where ladies get to know each other and network and share and talk about their family life and their other life and get to sit down and have a glass of wine and just be human, the better we are, because then you're just not a thing. You're just not a Zoom character. You're not a whatever. You're actually a human being that I know a little bit about, that I like, that I want to work with, I want to know. And I think it just makes us more productive. But I think your point is very well taken, and I think it should be on work time. I agree. You shouldn't force people to do things outside of the office, because that's complicated. Yes, next question.
I'm a big introvert, and a lot of people don't realize at work that I'm an introvert. But what it means to me personally is that I know that when I get home, I need to have me time. I have to set those boundaries where I spend time alone. But at work, one of the things that I try to do is I have a lot of people who are introverts in my team, and develop a growth mindset. So talk really about, if you're uncomfortable, that's great, because that means you're growing, and part of it is being an introvert, but really connecting with other people and growing as a human being, by doing that.
Yeah, I love your term growth mindset, and that's really what you need. Very intentional about that titling of the book, and the concept of it, because I was thinking about the second part, which is, why am I always taking care of everybody but me and thinking about other people above my own needs? Which is really what you're talking about, because we feel pressure, right, socially, to do what everybody else is doing. We feel pressure to show up for things that we don't maybe want to do or like to do. And I'm not just talking about at work. I'm talking about in life. How many times does your family suck you into drama that you don't want any part of, but you kind of got to go, or you tell yourself you got to go? I was talking to one of my best friends the other day, and she said, she got 4 kids, 4 boys, and she said, my husband's really good about coming downstairs and telling everybody what he's not going to do, and he's not doing this, and here's why, and he tells the boys, and she's like, how come I can't do that? I'm like, you can. You just choose not to. And she said, well, the boys see me differently. They don't accept it when I say, I'm like, because you allow them not to accept it. You see what I mean? We as women have been put into these boxes that we have to show up to things that maybe we don't really want to show up to, or that we've got to do things that we really don't want to do, or that we've got to just be long-suffering and we've got to take it on and we've got to be exhausted. And I think in some sense, in a very unhealthy way, we think we're super women, right? We think that we are somehow showing our kids, our family, our friends, our colleagues how much of super women we are and how big our capes are when we can be exhausted. I think that's a losing strategy, and I think so do you, if you're honest with yourself. I see a lot of people nodding their heads with their heads kind of like, yeah, she's bowling down my alley. We're all like this, so it's not just you. What I want you to get is that growth mindset that you're talking about is what I called reframing your thoughts. Shifting, taking your power back. Because if you didn't know it, you got power, ladies. Maybe somebody told you you didn't, but you do. Next question. Anybody else have questions on your self-wellness, your self-care? All right, I think, yep, okay.
Hi, my name is Culver. Question I have for you is, how would you package all this and kind of share this with a teenager, a female teenager?
Ooh, you asked a doozy there. If I could get them to sit down long enough to listen to me without the phone. But honestly, the answer is if I was sharing this with a younger audience, high school, and I talk to high school kids sometimes, I teach at college, like I said, which is really difficult because these kids have a different ethos. They have a different mindset. They are trained and reared. If you had kids, you know what I'm talking about. You were giving them iPads when they were 2. We were talking about that, Julie, right? You're talking about your niece, like the one that's 3 or the nephew knows more on the iPad than you do. It's their minds are rewired. So if I was sharing this with a younger audience, the first thing I do is, particularly with young ladies, because there's a lot going on with our girls right now, as you know, a lot. And they are, as you saw in the articles that were out in the New York Times and everything for the last few months, about the self-esteem crisis among girls. Because they're looking at Instagram and they're looking at TikTok, and that's their reality of what you should look like and be like. You should be like Cardi B and I don't even know the rest of their names. Cardi B and, Megan Thee Stallion and, these girls that are, is that, did I get it wrong? Is that not her name? Okay. All right, well, I blew that one. You guys, okay, turn off the camera now. But you guys get my point, right? They see this false self, this false image of I gotta be glamorous all the time, I gotta be super fit and fine all the time, and I gotta be blinged out, and I gotta be all this stuff. That's not something to be aspired to. So if I were talking to them, it would really start with some old-fashioned stuff where I'd sit them down and I would talk to them and just engage them about how they feel about themselves. And I do this through church and other means, and what I hear is astoundingly upsetting because their parents, and it's not a knock on the parents because the parents are doing their best, but we're all on these devices, and so our attention spans, we're not talking. It starts with simple talking. Simple conversation. Remember that thing we used to do where we actually looked at each other and we sat down and we spoke and then we got quiet and we listened and we spoke again and we shared? That thing. They don't know what that is, and you know this already. So when you talk about packaging it, if I was packaging it, I'll put it on TikTok. Then they'll watch it. I guess I should go on TikTok and do like the 30-second version of this. Like yourself, love yourself, be the one you need. I don't know. But if we're being serious as women in this room, we owe those girls a duty because there is a self-esteem crisis, and it is major, and it is impacting them in very negative suicide rates, depression, anxiety medication, things that 20 years ago we didn't see. It's not that people weren't depressed, they were. It's not that people weren't anxious, they were. But this is a big thing now. 1 in 5 Americans is on antidepressants. What does that tell you about where we are with this fast pace, run ourselves ragged, take on more than we could ever possibly handle? What does that tell you about where we are? So if I were packaging it, I would put it on TikTok, and I would get the lady's name right that I got wrong because I get in trouble. and they would cancel me because they said I didn't say the name right. And they would say I was really, they'd call me names and they'd say I was bad. So I don't want to do that. But thank you for the question, because I think the answer that I hope you're searching for is that I want to be able to talk to my teenager or to teenagers, and you'd be amazed how much they want you to talk to them. They really do want to be talked to. They really want you to be interested. They really want you to be invested. They really want you to care. They really want you to put the stuff down and force them to put the stuff down. This is one of those times when you need to force them. There should be a rule. If you got teenagers, take that thing away. When they come through the door, put it in the basket. You can pick it back up a little bit later. But you got family time, or you got to have rest time, or you got to do your homework time, or whatever we're doing, so that we can connect as a family, as human beings. I think that's really missing. Next question. Come on, this side of the room, you're making yourselves look bad. Thank you. There we go.
So listening, I'm Tammy Polanco. Listening to what you said, it just brought a thought to me. How do you instill, especially in young girls, the idea of them setting boundaries and respecting boundaries for self-care without kind of eroding their resiliency to kind of get through life?
It's what we model. You do know that we're the problem, right? It's not them. Got quiet in here. They're modeling and they are following through on what they see. Us do. The kids are not out of control. We are. The kids have a self-esteem crisis because we do. And we as women and as mothers, whether we like this or not, aunts, etc., we still set the tone in the culture. Always been that way. It probably will always be that way, which is why I'm telling you what I told myself when I was laying there. This book was born out of me getting COVID in February of 2020. I caught it before we knew what it was, before it even had a name, before the president announced it, and before we all went into kind of that March. Remember that March of 2020 period, that lockdown period? I caught it in Baton Rouge. I was the keynote speaker at a conference with 3,500 people. About 115 people got COVID at that event. And Congressman Luke Letlow died. He was there. Congressman Steve Scalise almost died. I almost died. There was a bunch of, and I got sick by the time I got to Indiana, which was my second set of stops. I was sick with 104 plus degree temperature. I didn't think I was going to make it. I didn't think I'd see my family again. And I remember laying in the bed, and I opened the book with just saying, is this it? Is this how I'm going to go out? I'm going to die of this thing in a hotel room with people I don't even know? And it made me start to ask questions about my life and my living. Was I living, or was I just existing? Was I always achieving? Was I always on? Was I always taking care of everybody else and showing up for everybody else and writing checks for everybody else and giving to everybody else? But when I needed something, who was there for me? It's okay to ask those questions, ladies, because it caused me to shift. It caused me to do better with me. It caused me to take inventory of my life and produce this book, which has changed a lot of women and men's lives, if I believe the reviews and the things that are said, television, feedback, whatever, and that it became a bestseller. I think they must have saw something that resonated. So what I'm saying is, if we really want to connect, to answer your question, with the young ladies, it starts with what we show them. Another thing my grandmother used to say, you teach people how to treat you. You teach people how to treat you. I didn't like that when she said it. I was like, what's that mean? I was like, so if they're treating me bad, I taught them to treat me bad? Yes. Because somewhere they learned that that was okay. Somewhere you gave people permission to take your power. Somewhere we gave people permission to exhaust us and to wear us out and to expect of us to do, give. So what I'm saying to you with love, sisters, is being the one you need, setting the right examples for your daughters and the young women in your life and in the workplace, that starts with how you take care of you. Do you think your kids are going to get a positive thought or a role model or feedback from somebody who's always exhausted, weary, tired, and Like this? No. And then what they think is, well, that's what I'm supposed to do. You see what I mean? So that's the real of this conversation. Being what you need, and I'm going to close with this. I want you to walk out the room remembering those 3 questions, and I want you to do this week. You got 2 exercises. Number 1 is I want you to do a row check. I want you to check your front row. I want you to check your circle of friends. And I want you to ask some hard questions. Who needs to stay and who needs to go? Now, I don't tell you to start calling up people and saying, I'm putting you out my row. Don't do that. That's not what I'm telling you to do. What I'm telling you is for you to take inventory, because if you got the right people in your life, and you got positive people in your life, and people that speak life to you, and are there for you, and are ride or die with you, and in your corner, but that also have the power to tell you when you're showing up bad, and when you're not doing right. If you got those kind of people in your life, you're unstoppable. So that's your first assignment. Do a row check. Some people sitting in the front of your row need to be moved to the balcony, and some need to go out the door. But you already know that. You just don't have the courage to put them out. If you love you enough and you know your value and your worth, you'll start making those changes. The second assignment is the one that I opened with, which is the 3 questions. What do I want? I want you to answer that question over these next weeks. Do it in your journal. Do it with your girls, in your book club, whatever you do. But answer the question, what do I want with the rest of my life? If you're 50 plus like me, you ain't got a whole lot left. You might get another 30 years. You live to be as old as my grandmother, you might get another 40. But that's not a lot of time. If you're a young woman, in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s, you got more time, you hope. Those 3 questions, what do I want, what do I need, how do I feel? And I'll end with this. We always think we have enough time. The reality is we don't. And I'm not saying that to be foreboding or to be dark. I'm saying that to inspire you to live your life, to do things that makes you happy, to do things on your bucket list, to show up for you, to give yourself permission to just have a good night's sleep for once. To rest, to respite, to not have to be on, to stop working all the time. Because when you die, work will go on. They will replace you. I promise you. They'll say she was nice and she worked all the time. But did she have a life? What did she do? Who were her friends? What did she leave us with? That's my word to you today. God bless you. God keep you. And thank you for having me.